Top story this half hour, the United States reevaluating our actions toward North Korea following a second long-range missile test on Friday. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, tweeting yesterday, "Done talking about North Korea. China is aware they must act. Japan and South Korea must increase pressure. Not only a U.S. problem, it will require an international solution." Both Vice President Mike Pence and Japan's Shinzo Abe weighed in.
The continued provocations by the rogue regime in North Korea are unacceptable. The United States of America is going to continue to marshal the support of nations across the region and across the world to further isolate North Korea economically and diplomatically. But the era of strategic patience is over.
We will have tangible action regarding military measurements and to improve our capability and take every caution to ensure safety of our people in the face of North Korea's threat.
Joining us is former Army intelligence officer Andrew Peek. Andrew, you listened to the language about all options are on the table. This sounds like the same rhetoric that we've heard from administration after administration after administration. What will be different now?
Well, I think you're going to see a concerted effort to put secondary sanctions on Chinese companies. That is, not sanctions on North Korean entities, but sanctions on groups from third countries, like China in particular, that invest in North Korea. Now, there's a lot of problems with doing that. Diplomatically, it incurs a cost. Countries hate that. They think it's extraterritorial application of U.S. law to their own companies. But in cases like Iran, secondary sanctions have been extremely effective in building a pressure against the regime to ultimately change its behavior.
But Iran is a very different economy.
It is.
Is and was versus China, and that was a question I raised earlier. So we had a few sanctions that were announced by the Treasury Department in late June, one against the Bank of Dandong in China, and it looks like they are preparing to target Chinese companies and banks that do business with North Korea on the weapons and nuclear program. But China is such a vast economy. Would even sanctions on multiple entities really amount to real financial pressure on a country that is thriving?
Well, to your first point, Iran is a different economy than North Korea, but it's actually...
I meant a different economy from China, meaning that's why sanctions, secondary sanctions, work more easily than they would on China.
But with Iran, we were sanctioning companies from Germany, or we were threatening to sanction them, or China, or France, things like Siemens that makes surveillance technology, ENI in Italy. And those are major multinational companies. I mean, those are challenging things to sanction. I think the issue in North Korea is that all of the national security risk and all of the national security interest in North Korea is concentrated in a single country, right? Iran has a few different enablers internationally. China, North Korea just has one, and that means that China is more likely to push back as hard as it can.
Well,
against us and
against us, right?
What are the pros and cons of hitting China where it really hurts? China's economy is driven by its ability to export goods that it assembles there in country to the United States. From an economic point of view, this president is tired of the large trade deficits that we run with them. Why not use it as not only an economic tool, but a diplomatic tool, and punch the Chinese until they do something on North Korea?
I think that's a terrific idea. I think the Chinese political leadership relies on two things. It relies on a functioning economy and high 8% growth year on year, and a security apparatus to stay in power. If you take away the economic growth and seriously start to redress the trade balance with China, then you might actually begin to see some kind of behavioral change. Now, the flip side, of course, is that anything that's a threat to that 8% or whatever growth is a direct threat to the legitimacy of the Communist Party's leadership. And they are going to behave in unpredictable ways. Yes, they may help us, but yes, they might also respond violently.
And let's not forget that we had the parade of these new missiles in China, where you had President Xi was dressed in camouflage or in military gear.
Right. I mean, we've had about a decade of double-digit Chinese defense spending increases. This is a country that's modernizing its military very quickly, and frankly, we don't have a great grip on what it can do because they haven't been in a conflict for several decades.
That's frightening.
It is frightening.
How much time do we actually have to work with China and these other countries on North Korea in a diplomatic way? Because we've seen North Korea launch 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles in 30-day spans. So.
Yeah, so this is actually the silver lining in this whole situation, which is that we have more time than we think. Unlike Iran, North Korea is essentially a status quo regime, right? It's not trying to change the region around it the same way Iran is. That is why the past few administrations have adopted a somewhat hands-off approach to North Korea. So the question really boils down to, if North Korea develops fissile nuclear material and puts it into a bomb and builds a delivery vehicle that can hit the United States, will they use it? And the way you answer that question speaks to whether you think Kim Jong-un is fundamentally different than other extremely unstable, extremely tyrannical leaders in the past, like Stalin, Mao, etc.